RTE. Hagan Erdstúr har le fesgro pakast orga the kiriched quiga €1,000,000 tucked on year free Africa Aragadish Breda O'Keefe agus There's a salir na bhfuil money gan phobal as in crealtal service public a helu agus ní consiach na fragriart on a head. Tánaiste, once again we see the culture of entitlement at RTE. It was unveiled for all of us to see before the Oireachtas Media Committee yesterday. The new Director General, Kevin Bacik, confirmed that RTE's former Chief Financial Officer, Breda O'Keefe, walked away from her job with a €450,000 redundancy package. Except this wasn't a redundancy package because her job was never eliminated. Further, that package wasn't signed off by RTE's executive board as required, but instead was cooked up between Ms O'Keefe and the former Director General, D. Forbes. A golden handshake to the value of 10 times the average salary in this state, cooked up behind closed doors with no sign-off, no tax paid, no disclosure until yesterday. You couldn't make it up, Tánaiste. It is damning, and people are sick to their back teeth at what is going on and what has gone on in RTE. And further, we learned that there were others involved. Rory Coveney resigned just last year from RTE. The driving force, we're told, behind the fiasco that was Toy Show the Musical, which lost €2.2 million of taxpayers' money. Yet he gets a secret golden handshake at the taxpayers' expense. We don't know the details of this. Do you, Tánaiste? And if not, will your government demand this information from RTE? And how many others, Tánaiste, has received secret golden handshakes in the last period? Is it any wonder that the payment of the TV licence has fallen off a cliff? Because the public have lost confidence in the governance of the public sector broadcaster, and it is a very dangerous place to be. The state and its citizens rely on RTE to hold those in power to account for trusted, reliable news and current affairs coverage. But it can't fulfil its obligations if there is no accountability, and that's what's missing here. You said you support those who have not paid their TV licence to be dragged before the courts and to be jailed if needs be. There are now over 300,000 households who have not paid their TV licences. But for the executives in RTE, well, they can walk away into the sunset with €450,000 in their back pockets and what? No accountability and absolutely no consequences. Let me put it to you this way, Tánaiste. In any other workplace, if you walk off the job, if you quit, you only get what you're entitled to, no more, no less. You're not even entitled to social welfare payments for a period of time. But if you're an RTE executive, you can walk off the job and receive €450,000 of taxpayers' money. It's a joke, Tánaiste, and people are demanding accountability. It's one rule for the privileged and another for ordinary workers. And yet we hear from you, and I'm sure we'll hear it again, we hear from the Taoiseach, we hear from the Minister Catherine Martin, and it says there will be accountability. But we've seen no accountability in the last 8 months. Tánaiste, we were told that the process of accountability in RTE had started, that it had begun. But is it accountability that those centrally involved in a financial scandal that has brought RTE into disrepute are able to walk off into the sunset with undisclosed exit packages that it seems that they were not contractually entitled to? When will there be consequences for those who have breached the public trust, for those who have played fast and loose with taxpayers' money? That is what ordinary people, the length and breadth of this state, are asking. So I ask you, do you support Sinn Féin's calls for the full details of the process that led to these secret redundancy packages, these golden handshakes, including that made to Rory Coveney and whoever else got them, to be made public as a matter of urgency? But crucially and above all, and finally, when will there be accountability? Because that's what people demand.
Thank you, Deputy.
Well, first of all, RTE is funded by a combination of the licence fee and taxpayers' money, and then advertising revenue as well. And essentially, taxpayer RTE licence money is the public's money. And where public money funds the bulk of any organisation's revenue, there should be absolutely full transparency and accountability to the public. It is unacceptable what has happened. There should be no secrecy in respect of any package that any executive received from RTE. all such packages should be in accordance with proper frameworks, proper procedures, and controls that existed in an organisation. So RTE had controls. RTE had procedures. They clearly were not adhered to in one particular case, it seems, fairly clear. And in my view, what should happen in that case is whatever the correct amount in terms of exiting, and I'm not au fait, I don't have any details of any package, Deputy, either in respect of Mr. Coveney, who you referenced. I don't have that package. You kind of slyly insinuated I might. I don't. I have no. Well, who said hands off? Yes. No government can ever interfere in a public service broadcaster. No, through the chair, no one can, I would say through the chair, there has always been a hands off and an arm's length, because I can remember a time when I was a young student where people accused governments of their day of interfering too much in RTE in terms of editorial control, or in terms of saying RTE shouldn't publish this, shouldn't criticise that, and so on. That was an earlier debate in society which I thought everyone had agreed with, that we should be arm's length from the broadcaster in respect of editorial control or trying to manipulate. That does not mean that in terms of adherence to the proper norms and frameworks in terms of packages or redundancy packages, dealing up front with the revenue, all of that is obviously something that the Minister is very concerned about, and that's why the Minister has initiated a variety of reports in respect of governance and culture within RT. It's not an acceptable culture, Deputy. There's no difference in our position here in respect of this. I would say, we shouldn't be putting words in people's mouths. I'm never on record anywhere saying people should be dragged before the courts. Never said that, but you said I did just now. So I think we need honesty, we need complete transparency, and we do need accountability. But I've never set myself up as a judge and executioner of anybody in society. And I mean that. We have to be careful too. And I think there should be full accountability before the committees of the House. But the committees in the House must also balance that with due process. I respectfully suggest that has not always been the case going back along in terms of how committees conducted inquiries. I think the current committees are doing a good job. And I think they have, in fairness to the committees, both in our Arts or Culture Committee, I think they have done good public service in terms of revealing a lot of this which would not have been revealed without the work of our Oireachtas committees. I have to say that, and I think the members of the committee, chaired by Niamh Smith and them, have elicited for the public information which we would not have been presented with. And that's good. And that's what I would like to see more of that, and I would like to see everybody involved come before the Dáil committees and the Oireachtas committees. I respect if people have ill health. I respect that principle. But I think that we should look at other mechanisms by which people could give their account of what happened. And maybe at Remove the Oireachtas could look at that, or the committees responsible could look at that in terms of those who have not come forward before the Oireachtas committee.
Taoiseach, you say you want full accountability, but I ask you, where is the accountability? We were led to believe that people were kind of forced to resign.
Sorry?
But now we were led to believe that people were kind of forced to resign just in the last year, people who were involved in the financial scandals. But yesterday we found out that they were actually given secret golden handshake payments, that the current RTE actually went into confidentiality clauses. So where is the accountability? You say you want full transparency in relation to the packages. So what do you say in relation to in Rory Coveney's package in relation to the confidentiality clause that was entered into that and the other packages? Because that just happened last year. That just happened 8 months ago. So do you, and I asked you, I invited you to do this, do you support our call on RTE that all packages, all redundancy payments, all golden handshakes be made transparent to the public who are funding them in the first place? And can I ask you, what is government going to do, if anything, in relation to accountability? And I make the point genuinely, there are 300,000 plus families who have stopped paying their TV licence. The view of government is they should be brought before the court, they should be prosecuted, and some of them will end up for a short period of time, possibly in prison. But there is no accountability. What are you saying in relation to the accountability of the executives who cause financial scandals and are walking into the sunset with hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' money in their back pockets?
Well, Deputy, you clearly haven't listened to my original reply. I said there should be full transparency. in respect of everybody who got a package from RTE. It's my view. It's public money. It's licence fee money. It's taxpayers' money. There has to be full transparency in respect of any individual. I've said this already earlier in this. And also in terms of the licence fee, I mean, in your alternative budget last year, just only 4 months ago you published it, Deputy, you didn't mention, let alone budget for, your plan to scrap the licence fee. You did not.
We did. There's a contingency fund of over 800 million
euros. 150 million. And the other point I would make, Deputy, the other fundamental problem with the amnesty proposal is that the hundreds of thousands down through the years who paid their licence fee, I mean, it's an incredible insult to them. Fools you were to pay is what you're saying to them. And basically, what does that mean for other bills that people pay? What you're really saying to people, don't bother paying your bills. Don't pay any kind of...
Who's dishonest now? Who's dishonest now?
That is what you're saying. Because you know what?
And you won't answer the question about accountability.
We will look after you in the end of the day. That's what you're saying. And we don't have to provide for that. We don't have to provide for that in alternative budgets.
The only person who's held accountable is the mother who can't pay her TV licence.
I think for those who paid their licence fees over the years, Deputy, that was an incredible slap in the face. And you basically...
You know what's a slap in the face? €450,000. That's the slap in the face.
Sorry.
You've basically...
Would you please respect the orders of the House? Tánaiste, the time is up.
I just want to finally say, what you've basically said to the Irish people is, why bother pay any bill?
No, that's completely and utterly dishonest. Completely and utterly dishonest.
Deputy.
And you have nothing to say on accountability.
Deputy Ivana Bacik, please.
I have to recall that Ireland has lots to be proud of when it comes to public service broadcasting. We do, and that has to be said. But there are so many areas where we can do better. We boast generations of talented writers and artists, many of whom have had to leave these shores to have their work seen and heard. And the work of many who are here, who are contributing so much to news coverage, to creation of content here at home, that work is desperately undervalued by our national broadcaster. Tánaiste, far too many of those who keep the lights on and the cameras rolling at RTE are denied a fair wage, a pension, holiday and maternity leave because they're trapped on bogus self-employment contracts, and that's the reality. Yet these workers' rights issues are not receiving enough scrutiny. Instead, our time is being preoccupied by what our colleague Senator Marie Sherlock has rightly described as the upstairs-downstairs culture that prevails at RTE and the indefensible conduct of a few at the top. And yesterday's committee appearances confirmed that. People were shocked, rightly, at the revelation that the former Director General of RTE signed off on a €450,000 retirement payment to the former Chief Financial Officer, Breda O'Keefe. And I think people are also shocked when they compare this extraordinary outlay with RTE's decision to spend tens of thousands of euros appealing findings on bogus self-employment practices at the station, findings made by the Department of Social Protection. So those who are most demoralised by the revelations of the past year, the revelations of secret golden handshakes, the most demoralised are staff on the ground who are paying for the very Flahulach approach being taken by those at the top to the resources of a struggling public body. Tánaiste, we all want to move on and focus on issues like the workers' rights issues I've mentioned, and crucially, like the key issue of the future funding model for the broadcaster, which you in government have not yet answered. But you also have questions to answer, as does RTE, about past conduct of those at the top. And you've said just now there must be transparency and accountability, and indeed you said earlier today that the exit package given to Breda O'Keefe should be reassessed, and indeed you suggested she might consider paying back excessive amounts. But this is not just about one individual's retirement deal, and I think you agree with that, because we know there are others. RTE's former Director of Strategy, Rory Coveney, we know, also received an exit package when he resigned in July. We don't know the value of that payment or indeed what it was for, and when asked, a spokesperson said RTE could not provide more information. So we know everybody wants to turn over a new leaf and focus on real issues, but that cannot happen while public money apparently is still being spent sustaining the bad culture of old, and indeed fighting those who are bearing the brunt of this crisis at the Workplace Relations Commission or the High Court. So, Tánaiste, can you say how you're going to go about achieving that accountability and transparency that you've said is so badly needed? And, while we in Labour absolutely support decent investment in public service broadcasting and we pay our TV licences, we still need to know, I think, how much of the public money that is going into the national broadcaster has been spent covering the costs of yet another lucrative exit package, and how much has been spent fighting the rights of workers who are struggling at the bottom of the system in RTE.
Thank you very much. Tánaiste, please.
I would agree with the Deputy on almost everything that you've said. I think your point about bogus self-employment contracts is very valid. I think there is and I think you have consistently raised this, and it is a very, I think, a serious issue. And there is a very significant comprehensive investigation underway. The Department of Social Protection commenced that investigation into the PRSI classification of RTE contractors. And RTE provided the Department with a list of 695 workers engaged on a contract basis in 2018, 2019 and 2020, and these form the basis of the investigation. It's a significant investigation, and I think this is a very serious issue. And which undermined potentially the rights of many workers within RTE. Decisions have issued in respect of about 131 workers. 89 workers were found to have employee status in Class A PRSI applies, while 42 were found to be self-employed and insurable at Class S PRSI. And 48 decisions have been appealed. So it's important that an investigation continues. A total of 1.7 million has been in compliance has been notified to RTE to date, and the total liability repaid to date by RTE amounts to 1.2 million. So there is a more fundamental. I mean, that investigation has to conclude, but there is a more fundamental question then in terms of future workforce composition and rights and entitlements to people working for RTE, and not pressure on workers to declare themselves to be independent contractors as opposed to being essentially doing the same work that they were doing as employees and losing out on entitlements consequent of being full-time employees. And I also agree about the centrality of public service broadcasting. We must not lose sight of this. And I do agree with you, there has to be full transparency. There should be no secrecy or confidentiality in terms of any package because it's public money. And I do accept also for staff on the ground in RTE, morale is further undermined by these revelations. And the Minister has initiated comprehensive advisory reports into RTE on governance, on culture, and they will have to form the basis for new structures that will deliver accountability, and that will also give confidence and trust to the Oireachtas and to the government in terms of reforms of the funding system. Because all along we've been told, rush your decision in respect of a situation that clearly is not satisfactory at the moment. And I think there has to be clear, informed light, if you like, and evidence to base new decisions in respect of that. And I'm conscious myself in the area of foreign affairs. RTE's capacity is very significantly reduced in terms of what it can cover and in terms of the complexity analysis and analysis required of what's going on globally in the world today. It's not what it should be, in my view, in terms of public service broadcasting.
Well, Tánaiste, I thank you for responding on the issue of workers' rights at RTE, and indeed there are very serious issues for workers at levels below those top management levels at RTE. Trevor Keegan, the chair of the NUJ Trade Union Group, said today impending redundancies at RTE loom large. This prospect is really impacting on morale among staff at all levels below top management, and you're right about that. But when will we see results? When will we see an outcome from the Minister's review? And when will we see actual improvement in conditions for those who are currently, as I say, on those bogus self-employed contracts, just incorrectly being described as contractors by RTE when they're actually staff? And when will we see certainty and clarity for staff on their future? And that relies on a future funding model, and we haven't got clarity from government on that. And finally, Tánaiste, you've said again you want transparency and accountability around past conduct and payments made to those at the top. We still have a real lack of information, a real lack of clarity about the payments made to others beyond Breda O'Keeffe. Kevin Backhurst took up his position on Monday 10th July. Rory Coveney announced his resignation on Sunday 9th July. We still have no clarity about exit payment made there, nor about exit payments to others at the top levels in RTE. And we need to know from government what you're going to do about it.
Again, I think the government, as I said, the two expert advisory groups on governance, culture, contractor fees, human resources and other matters. Those recommendations I expect shortly. They will be incorporated in a new strategy for RTE, which will come to government. I think that will bring clarity to the basis upon which government will take decisions in terms of future funding of RTE. In the interim, there has to be absolute transparency in terms of any packages. There should be no secrecy. And the Chair, Siún Ní Raghallaigh, and the Director General are working very hard to restore trust. And that's the parallel process that's underway to the process of revelation and necessary accountability before the Oireachtas committees. Parallel with that, we have to create stability within the public service broadcaster. We have to create a future, and we have to ensure that it can grow and recover from this period. And we're very focused on that imperative. And our actions will follow that.
Deputy Peadar, Tobin.
Taoiseach, this week Fianna Fáil launched their campaign for the yes vote in the so-called care referendum, and I think it's important that we look behind the glossy marketing leaflets and actually analyse where the government is in relation to care. So Aontú has been carrying out significant research on this issue of children in state care by way of parliamentary questions, mostly to Minister Roger O'Gorman's department, and the information is absolutely shocking. First of all, there are record numbers of children being referred to TUSLA on an annual basis. A PQ that Aontú received showed that in the first 10 months of last year, 72,000 children were referred to TUSLA. So for the whole year, that works out at 90,000 children being referred to TUSLA for the year. It is absolutely staggering. It's an increase of 28% in 2 years. To put that in perspective, it's 30,000 more children than actually sat the Leaving Cert last year. It's 256 children a day being referred to TUSLA, 10 children an hour being referred to TUSLA in the state at the moment. Now, TUSLA has admitted to me, by way of parliamentary questions as well, that they are putting many of these vulnerable children into what's called unregulated residential units called special emergency arrangements. These are typically just rented apartments, and these SEAs often are staffed by unvetted staff. It is astounding that any government would put children who are so vulnerable into this particular situation. We also know that we have hundreds of children now going missing from state care on an annual basis. The Irish Examiner reports today that just in January, 22 children went missing from state care just in that month. An incredible situation. The state is in loco parentis of these children and is now losing hundreds of these children on an annual basis. Children taken into TUSLA potentially because of sexual abuse are then being lost to the state, leaving them potentially as targets for traffickers for sexual abuse. The state is meant to be a sanctuary for these children in the difficulties that they are in, but that is either through ineptitude or resource disinterest, leaving these sane children to be lost to abuse again. Incredibly, I've asked TUSLA how many children have reported sexual abuse while in state care, and TUSLA have told me they simply don't record that information centrally. Data shown to Aontú as well, showing that over 200 children have died either in state care or known to state care in the last 10 years. 38 of these children who've taken their own lives. Many more have died from overdoses and others who were murdered. And I want to state very clearly that the rank and file staff that are involved in the protection of children are doing their best. They're under enormous pressure. Many of them are suffering burnout. But if this happened to children in the past, there would be a state apology and there would be a full investigation. Taoiseach, or Taoiseach, why is your government not taking the horrendous neglect of children in state care seriously?
Well, first of all, just in respect of the referendum itself, it covers 3 areas. More inclusive definition of the family, to make sure that the up to 43,000 children born in 2022 outside of marriage are finally recognised by our constitution and have that sense of full inclusion. So it's a very children-focused amendment in that context, and takes within its compass new family formations in recent times. Secondly, it also fundamentally deals with the role of women in society through the deletion of an article, of one article and its replacement and in its replacement then providing for care. When I say providing, recognising care. And the fundamental issue of care provision is one that the Oireachtas and the government of today, I think quite correctly, has to deal with in terms of the allocation of resources and the prioritisation of resources. Now, if you look at the budget to TUSLA over the last number of years, it has increased very significantly. And likewise, in terms of a whole range of services, if you look at childcare, for example, resources have vastly increased compared to where they were. Alleviation of fees to parents to try and reduce the pressure on families and parents in respect of the care of their children. In terms of DESH programmes and programmes in disadvantaged schools and intervention programmes, multidisciplinary intervention programmes, again increase. Children referred to TUSLA, first of all, it's a very sad situation in terms of background issues or challenges that families have and that certain parents have, that children are either referred to foster care or children are referred to TUSLA. And many of these cases are extremely complex. I think you'd have to acknowledge that. And using words like ineptitude, I think too judgmental, I think. In many instances, you're looking at teenagers, yes, it could be 15, 14, who are in state services. It could be a variety of state services. Talk to people who work in those services in terms of, that there are complex backgrounds here. So when you use the phrase, children are lost, and it's almost as if you're saying it's TUSLA's fault, I don't think that's fair, if put as baldly and simply as that. Yes, we have responsibilities. We have to do everything we possible. We have to do everything we possibly can to prevent such situations arising. But any of us who've been dealing with young people in life realise the complexities of what are involved here. As a Minister for Education, I can recall people escaping from Trinity House. I can recall at the time education, health, justice as 3 silos.
Thank you.
This was before TUSLA.
The time is up.
This was before a more coordinated approach which has emerged with the Department of Children and Equality, ultimately being the end result of a whole process whereby we tried to unite services for children under one roof.
Deputy Tobin.
Taoiseach, you raised the issue of ineptitude, and I'll just give you an example of this. So, retired Judge Sims wrote to Minister Roger O'Gorman, stated that he had utmost concern with the predicament that children were in state care, and he attached 4 reports, anonymised reports, with the permission of people to share those reports. He gave them to Minister Roger O'Gorman, and Mr. Roger O'Gorman deleted 3 of those 4 reports with the excuse that there were GDPR issues. So a judge stuck his neck out in trying to bring change to the space, and the bureaucratic response to the state was to delete those reports. And actually, I've learned that the department actually reported Judge Sims to his seniors for doing so. Now, also, Taoiseach, you mentioned issues that happened before. There's nothing that happens today that did not happen before. But all the information is showing that this is happening at a far greater level than it ever did before. Enormous damage is being done to children in state care. The state has serious responsibilities. High dependency units are being closed down. Residential beds for these children are being closed down.
Thank you, Deputy. The time
These
is up,
staff are leaving because of burnout. This is happening because the government is not focusing resources and priority to the issue.
Again, in response to Judge Sims's letter, the department, first of all, TUSLA is working with officials within the Department of Children. There was 4 documents sent. I think you've referenced bureaucratic response. I think what you're referring to there is the Data Protection Act, and the department have formed the view that it did not have a legal basis to process the personal data contained in those 3 reports, and those reports were subsequently deleted from the department's records. However, the department is addressing the substantive issues to which the reports related and which were set out in the correspondence itself. And these are issues that have to be dealt with in respect of personal information, in respect of any individual in the state or any child in the state. But again, legislation is underway in terms of the general scheme of the Childcare Amendment Bill 2023 in respect of interagency cooperation. which is essential here. The children concerned in the correspondence from Judge Sims require services from a number of state bodies, and improved interagency cooperation is essential to ensure better care and better services for children in these situations.
Deputy Michael Collins, on behalf of the Rural Independent Group.
Thank you very much, Glencore. Taoiseach, the HSE is running from one disaster to another in this country. The budget overrun last year of up to €1 billion still goes unrecognised by the state as if it was a couple of €100. Overcrowding in our hospitals in 2023 was the worst on record. Patients on trolleys in University Hospital Limerick for 2023 was 21,143. University Hospital Cork 12,487. University Hospital Galway 8,914. University Hospital Sligo 8,094, and St Vincent's Hospital Dublin 6,555. This is an astonishing figure which goes unnoticed year after year by this and previous governments, leaving the HSE hospital staff burnt out. Shortages of GPs is a cause of huge concern throughout our country, with many GPs reluctant to take on new medical cards patients as it is simply not viable. South Dock services in my own constituency of Cork South West is gone. In most parts of West Cork, only Bantry remaining South Dock service in there. Dentists throughout Ireland are reluctant to take new medical card patients. It is no longer viable for them. In West Cork, the school dentists in Castletownbere, Dunmanway, Scull and Skibbereen have been closed down, leaving parents travelling all over the country to get dental service for their children. Podiatry services for older people are on a very limited basis, now disqualifying many of our genuine elderly needing foot care. We have a severe shortage of HSEOTs, forcing people to pay for their vital service, which many can't afford. We have huge waiting lists for physiotherapy, forcing those who can't afford again to pay for the private practitioner. The home help situation is at an all-time low, with carers minding loved ones, pleading for more home help hours and more patients awaiting discharge, but can't as they await a home care package to be put in place due to a lack of home help services. Changes now to home help services in parts of West Cork will see people who had 2 home help hours, 2 home helps a week coming to them will now have 4, but at the same time, not any extension of time, which upsets a lot of people because they built up relationships with their home helpers. Parents of children with additional needs are now waiting for lengthy periods of time to get services such as OT, speech language therapy, psychology therapy, and psychiatric services. Respite for adults with intellectual and physical disability has not been available for carers in this country since before COVID. Taoiseach, this is a factual list that surely every politician in the country has. Last week I was speaking with a man in St Vincent's Hospital, Dublin, who spent 18 hours in a chair and 5 days following this on a trolley. Also I spoke to a Clonakilty lady who spent 9 days on a trolley in CUH last week. Taoiseach, who is in charge? Can you tell me where the budget the HSE is getting from, where is it going? And also, can you tell me where did the €1 billion overspend go last year? And do you accept that the HSE as a delivery vehicle for the services I have mentioned above have failed the people miserably? And will we have any accountability?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
For his presentation and for raising the issue of health services. I think factually, I presume you know that Bernard Gloucester is the Chief Executive Officer of the HSE and Minister Stephen Donnelly is the Minister for Health in relation to the question of who's in charge. And to say to you that there are about 26,172 more staff now working in our health service than there were at the beginning of 2020. So that's 26,000 extra staff, Deputy, that you have not referenced in your opening remarks. 8,000 plus nurses and midwives, that's a 21% increase. And in fact, if you look at the OECD frameworks and assessment of various health services, we're one of the top in terms of numbers, in terms of nurses per patient across the OECD. 4,000 health and social care professionals additional, and about close to 3,000 doctors and dentists. We have cut costs for patients across the board. As I'm sure you realise, we've removed inpatient hospital charges. We've had the biggest expansion of access to free GP care in the history of the state, to 500,000 more people. That's up to 60% of our population are now eligible for a GP card or a medical card. We've reduced the drug payment scheme costs. We have funded significantly diagnostic scans for patients. We've introduced free contraception to women up to the age of 31. We're publicly, for the first time ever, funding assisted human reproduction, including IVF. And we've agreed a new consultant contract, which I think is very significant in terms of increased activity, and in excess of 1,700 consultants have now already signed up to that new consultant contract. And I think, Deputy, in the past 2 years, you must be aware that we've built up an entire new community health service from scratch, including primary care, including chronic disease management and older person services and ambulance services, employing thousands of new people out there in the community. We've increased our acute hospital bed capacity by 1,126 beds over the last 3 years, and we've expanded our ICU capacity by 25%. And new primary care centres have opened up all over the country. We've increased college and training places to deal with, what were challenges in terms of new recruits and so on. 662 student places have been provided in the higher education sector on health-related courses this academic year, including 200 student places across nursing and midwifery therapy professions in Northern Ireland. And today, for every GP who retires now, between 1.5 and 3 new GPs are starting work. And waiting times are coming down, and we have provided a real significant transformation in terms of women's healthcare. More seeing 3 gynae, fertility hubs, specialist menopause clinics. And in the context of what you said, Deputy, the population is rising, has risen very significantly.
Time is up
and that
now,
continues
please.
to place strain on services. I acknowledge that. But you have to acknowledge the enormous increase in investment and resources that actually has occurred.
Deputy Collins.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach, for your reply. You say 26,000 extra staff, but you do admit in the end that we have a huge population growth in this country. So the problem here is that, you're saying we're cutting costs. You're certainly cutting costs, and I told you where all the costs were cut and where all the people are finding extremely difficult to access services. You have over 1 million people, up to 1 million people on waiting lists in this country, some waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years for simple procedures. There's where the problem is. You opened the new Silverwood new unit in Clonakilty Hospital last week, which is patients have been moved into, which is a positive thing. But the staff had come to me telling me that they were under major pressure, under extreme pressure, and I acted on that. And the old units that have been closed, I want to find out, are they going to be filled with the same amount of people that were in there before? So the same with the mental health unit in Bantry, which we were led to believe would be completed in January 2024, is now being put off till July. Taoiseach, with the Children's Hospital in Dublin getting an increased budget of 510 million this week, bringing the total bill cost to 2.24 million, which was estimated initially would cost 1.73 billion. Surely, Taoiseach, what I have told you today shows you something very seriously is wrong with the HSE, and what will this government do about it?
Thank you, Deputy.
I welcome the fact that you've acknowledged government funding for Clonakilty District Hospital. It's not normal pattern of political behaviour on your part to acknowledge government funding where it happens, and I do welcome the fact that government funding has enabled what is, I think we both agree, a fantastic service and facility for the people of Clonakilty and Adoica Mór Himple. I want to say in terms of the Children's Hospital, that's for every child in Ireland potentially, and it certainly is for children in West Cork who need access to specialist treatment. And it's been a long saga. Without question, issues arose in terms of structures and all the rest of it. But what I'm in no doubt about, in the context of Crumlin or Temple Street or current services, the sooner we get this hospital built and operational, the better, because I think it would be absolutely transformative for children in this country, in terms of having single suites, in terms of the theatre capacity, infection control, particularly children with very vulnerable conditions. It will be, to me, transformative. And there's all the negative, and I understand it, and that's important, accountability, but we equally need to focus on what this will mean for the children of the country, including children from West Cork who will have to avail of these services.
That concludes Leaders' Questions. Please, we move now to questions on promised legislation. Can I